Monday mornings at Maison Leora were usually calm, the quiet hum of sewing machines in the back rooms, the scent of fresh espresso drifting from the small kitchen, designers hunched over sketch pads under the warm light of our open studio. But that morning, the air was different. Whispers floated across desks, interns darted between offices, and the clicking of heels was sharper, faster. I stepped inside, my portfolio tucked under my arm, and immediately caught fragments of conversation. He's back, straight from Paris. Says he's going to redefine everything. The words had an electric edge to them, the kind that hinted at both excitement and dread. When I reached the main floor, the answer to the murmurs stood at the center of the room, Adrian Leora, tall, impeccably dressed, confidence radiating from the cut of his navy suit, the founder's son, freshly returned from a prestigious fashion school, looking every bit the star of his own runway. The founder himself, Elias Leora, was at his side, beaming. "Team," Elias announced. "This is Adrian. He's here to bring fresh vision to Maison Leora. I'll be leaving for Europe for an extended trip, and while I'm away, Adrian will lead our creative direction." The applause was polite, but I could feel the tension ripple underneath. 15 years of my life had been poured into this place, its aesthetic, its loyal clientele, the careful balance between innovation and timeless design. I told myself change could be good, even if it was abrupt. As the introductions ended, my gaze shifted and caught on a man standing just behind Adrian. Marcus Hale, the assistant I'd only heard about through the grapevine. He was watching me with a narrowed intensity, eyes sweeping over me like he was cataloging every thread of my suit, every flicker of my expression. Then he smirked, not the friendly kind, but the kind that says, "I've already decided who you are." I held his gaze, refusing to look away first. Something in my gut told me this day wasn't just the start of a new era for the brand. It was the start of something else entirely, something far less welcome. Adrian moved toward the glass-walled conference room. Calling the team in for his first presentation, I followed, my steps measured, already bracing for what was about to come next. The conference room lights dimmed, and Adrian tapped the screen of his tablet. A series of sketches appeared on the wall, sharp, angular silhouettes, dramatic hemlines, metallic fabrics that shimmered under the projector's glow. They were striking, no doubt, the kind of pieces that belonged on the Paris runway, photographed under 100 flashing bulbs. I leaned forward, studying each design. They're bold. I began carefully, but the materials alone will push production costs beyond our usual margins. And these cuts, I gestured toward a particularly severe jacket, might alienate our long-time clients. Maison Leora's strength has always been innovation without abandoning wearability. Adrian straightened, a faint smile on his lips that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We need to lead, not follow," he said. "If we start designing for the past, we'll stay there." I swallowed the retort on my tongue. This wasn't the time for a battle, not in front of the entire team. "I'm not suggesting we stay in the past," I replied evenly. "I'm suggesting we make sure the future we're creating has an audience willing to pay for it." He moved on without acknowledging my point, clicking through the rest of the presentation with the ease of someone who had already decided the direction. The meeting ended with polite applause, though I caught the uneasy glances between some of the senior designers. As the room emptied, I gathered my notes. I had almost reached the door when I heard Marcus's voice, low and deliberate. "She's holding you back," he said. I froze just beyond the threshold, the hum of the office masking my footsteps. Hannah Adrian asked. "She's too tied to the old Maison Leora," Marcus replied smoothly. "If you want to make your mark, you can't let her anchor you to someone else's legacy. This is your moment." Adrian didn't answer right away, but the silence said enough. I stepped away before they could notice me lingering, my fingers tightening around the folder in my hands. I had spent years protecting this brand. Now, it seemed, I'd have to start protecting my place in it. 2 days later, the official meeting notes from Adrian's presentation landed in my inbox. I skimmed through them, expecting the usual summaries. Instead, my eyes froze on a line attributed to me. Hannah expressed strong opposition to the proposed designs and recommended scrapping the collection. I had said nothing of the sort. My concerns had been about cost and market fit, not a wholesale rejection. But on paper, it read like I had dismissed Adrian's vision entirely. I walked to Marcus's desk, holding the printed pages. "These aren't accurate," I said. He looked up with that same practiced smirk. "That's what was discussed. As I recall, maybe you don't remember it clearly." The deliberate condescension in his tone was almost impressive. I turned away, knowing that pressing him here would only feed whatever game he was playing. Over the next week, I began noticing changes to the calendar. Brainstorm sessions and creative previews that I would normally lead were suddenly taking place without me. When I asked Adrian, he brushed it off. "We're just trying different workflows. Don't take it personally." But I was taking it personally, because it wasn't just about me, it was about the brand. I started hearing murmurs from the production team, sample shipments stuck in customs due to incomplete paperwork, fabric orders arriving late, suppliers chasing unpaid invoices. I reviewed the numbers myself and saw the truth costs had spiked nearly 20% in a matter of weeks. I brought the reports to Adrian's office. "These delays and overruns will hit us hard at launch," I said, laying the pages on his desk. He glanced at them briefly before pushing them back toward me. "I appreciate your concern, but this is the cost of innovation. We'll make it back in sales." I walked out, my jaw tight. He didn't see it yet, but the foundation was starting to crack. And when it finally gave way, someone would be standing in the rubble, taking the blame. The weekly creative meeting felt heavier than usual. Adrian stood at the head of the table, flipping through mock-ups with a sharp, almost impatient rhythm. I sat opposite him, my own notes neatly stacked, waiting for the right moment to raise the production concerns again before I could speak. He looked directly at me. "Hannah, I've been hearing that you've been resisting change," he said. His tone clipped. "You've been undermining my authority since the day I arrived." The room went still. My pulse thudded in my ears. "If by resisting change you mean questioning choices that could sink our margins, then yes, I've been doing my job," I replied evenly. Marcus leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Maybe what this team needs is fresh blood," he said smoothly. "Someone who's not stuck in the old ways." A faint murmur rippled through the designers. I caught the quick glance between two junior staffers, worry mixed with disbelief. Adrian's jaw tightened. "I didn't come back from Paris to have every decision second-guessed. This is my company's future, and I won't have it held hostage by outdated thinking." "Outdated," I said, my voice sharper now. 15 years of building this brand from the ground up isn't outdated. It's the reason we still have a loyal customer base." His face flushed, eyes narrowing. Then he slammed his hand on the table. "Your experience means nothing next to my degree." The words hit the air like a crack. He didn't wait for a response. "You're fired," he said flatly, effective immediately. A stunned silence followed. Chairs shifted, papers rustled, but no one spoke. I gathered my notes with deliberate calm, sliding them into my bag. My hands didn't shake, not yet, without another word. I walked to the door. Behind me, the team stayed frozen in their seats, the weight of what had just happened pressing down on every corner of the room. I stepped into the corridor, the echo of his words still sharp in my ears, and headed for my office to clear it out. I kept my door closed that afternoon, packing in silence. Box by box, I folded away 15 years of sketches, fabric swatches, and handwritten notes, the quiet record of a career I'd built, stitch by stitch. My phone buzzed constantly on the desk. I can't believe this happened. They've lost their mind firing you. If you need a reference, I'm here. Every message carried the same mixture of disbelief and solidarity. I replied to none of them. Not yet. Words felt too fragile to hold the weight of what had just happened. By Wednesday, I was gone. My keycard deactivated, my nameplate removed from the office door. I thought leaving would bring a kind of relief, but instead, the absence gnawed at me. I knew the chaos was coming. The only question was how quickly. It didn't take long. A former colleague called to tell me that 2 production runs had been rejected due to faulty stitching, a problem I would have caught in the first review. Fabric suppliers were demanding payment for orders that had been placed without proper terms. The spring collection deadline, once comfortably on track, was now weeks behind. On Friday morning, as I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, my phone rang again, this time from an old friend in the merchandising department. Her voice was low, urgent. Elias just got a call. She said, I straightened. From who? Halberd and Co. They're furious, apparently. Adrian promised them an exclusive launch in April, but with these delays, it's not happening. They demanded to know why you were fired. I exhaled slowly, the pieces clicking into place. Halberd & Co. was one of our biggest retail partners, the kind whose opinion could sway the industry. If they were questioning Adrian's decisions directly to his father, the truth wouldn't stay buried for long. I hung up, staring at the steam curling from my coffee. Somewhere in Europe, Elias Leora was getting the first tremors of a storm that had been building since the day his son walked back through those glass doors. It was late afternoon when my phone lit up with a number I knew by heart. I hadn't expected to hear from Elias so soon, but his voice left no room for small talk. Hannah, come back to the office. Now. I could hear the strain in his tone, the clipped urgency of someone who'd been blindsided. Before I could respond, he continued, I've had calls all week, clients, suppliers, partners. Halberd & Co. isn't the only one. Today, Miriam Dufresne herself told me she'd pull her entire order if you weren't reinstated. Miriam Dufresne, a fashion house in Paris with deep ties to Maison Leora's prestige. If she was making threats, things were worse than I'd imagined. What exactly did Adrian tell you? I asked. Nothing that matters now. Elias said, I want you in the boardroom tomorrow morning. And Hannah. He paused, his voice softening just slightly. Don't say anything to Adrian yet. That detail struck me. He wasn't warning his son. He wasn't even giving him the courtesy of knowing I was coming back. I'll be there, I said, and the line went dead. That night, I opened the portfolio I'd packed away just days earlier. I sorted through the latest production reports, the supplier complaints, the rejected samples, every document that painted the full picture of what had happened in my absence. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt focused. By morning, I was dressed in the same deep navy suit I'd worn the day Adrian introduced himself to the team. As I stepped into the lobby, the receptionist's eyes widened in surprise, but she said nothing, only sliding a visitor badge across the counter. The elevator doors closed around me, the hum of the machinery rising as the numbers ticked upward. I clutched the portfolio under my arm, ready for whatever waited in that boardroom. When the doors opened on the executive floor, I stepped out, my heels clicking against the marble, each step drawing me closer to the moment Elias had set in motion. Elias was already seated at the head of the boardroom table when I walked in, his expression unreadable. Adrian sat to his right, arms crossed, a defensive set to his jaw. Marcus was on the far side, his phone face down in front of him. "Sit," Elias said. "We're going to settle this now." I placed my portfolio on the table and began laying out documents one by one. Since my departure, production has fallen behind by an average of 3 weeks per line. 3 major suppliers have reported unpaid invoices. 2 client contracts are at risk due to missed delivery dates. All of this stems from procedural breakdowns I flagged before I was let go. Adrian leaned forward. "You were undermining my leadership. Hannah." I had to make a call. I met his gaze evenly. "No, Adrian, you were working with incomplete information." I slid the first piece of proof toward Elias, a printed email thread showing supplier inquiries unanswered for days. "These were blocked at the assistant level. You never saw them." Marcus shifted in his chair. "That's ridiculous." Elias raised a hand, silencing him. I pulled out the meeting notes from Adrian's debut presentation and placed them beside my own recording of that day's discussion. The official notes state I rejected the collection entirely. The audio shows otherwise. The language was altered. Elias played the recording on his phone, the clear difference between my actual words and the written version impossible to ignore. Adrian's brow furrowed as he looked from Marcus to the documents. "You changed my meeting records." Marcus's voice was tight. "I acted in the best interest of the brand." "No," Elias said coldly. "You acted in your own." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the air system. Elias closed the folder, his decision already made, and turned his attention to Marcus. Adrian stared at Marcus like he was seeing him for the first time. The arrogance that usually sat so easily on his shoulders had been replaced by something closer to disbelief. Marcus, on the other hand, straightened and launched into a hurried defense. I was trying to protect Adrian's authority. If Hannah kept challenging him in front of the team, the brand's stability would have been at risk. "That's enough." Elias cut in, his voice sharp as glass. "You've been manufacturing instability, not protecting us from it. Pack your things. You're done here." Marcus's mouth opened like he might argue, but one look at Elias convinced him otherwise. He gathered his phone and left without another word, the door closing softly behind him. The silence he left behind was heavier than the confrontation. Adrian exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair before turning to me. "I misjudged you," he admitted. "I thought you were trying to hold us back, but you were trying to keep us from falling apart. I kept my voice even. I've been protecting this brand since before you were in school. That hasn't changed." He nodded, the fight gone from his tone. "Then maybe I should have listened sooner." Elias leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. "You both care about this company, but in different ways. That's not a weakness, it's an opportunity." His gaze moved between us. "I want you to co-lead the next collection. Equal say, equal responsibility. If we're going to survive this, it will be because tradition and innovation work together." Adrian hesitated, then extended his hand toward me. "Truce." I took it, feeling the tension shift, if not disappear entirely. "Truce." Elias stood, satisfied. "Good. I expect a preliminary concept in 2 weeks. Make it something neither of you could have done alone." As we left the boardroom, Adrian and I walked side by side for the first time since his return. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was no longer a battle for survival. It was a test of whether we could turn 2 opposing visions into one. The first week was a tug of war. Adrian came in with sketches that were beautiful but impractical fabrics that would double our costs, silhouettes that would work on a runway but not in a retail store. I pushed back. showing him past sales data, trend analyses, and the subtle adjustments that could keep his vision intact while making the pieces viable for production. He bristled at first, his pen tapping impatiently as I explained why a dramatic high-collared coat might need a more wearable cut. "If we water everything down, what's the point?" he asked. "Not watered down," I countered. "Refined, so that someone actually buys it instead of just admiring it in a magazine." To his credit, he started listening. In return, I gave space to his ideas, letting him swap our usual muted palette for richer jewel tones, incorporating asymmetrical lines into a few staple pieces, and allowing for one truly avant-garde statement dress that would grab attention during the runway show. By the third week, we'd fallen into a rhythm. He'd push for bold, I'd pull for balance, and somewhere in the middle, the designs began to feel different. Better. The collection didn't look like his work or mine, it looked like ours. When the pre-launch previews began, I braced for the worst. Our most loyal customers, the ones who had been with Maison Leora for decades, walked through the showroom with curious eyes. They lingered, touching fabrics, tracing seams. By the end, they were nodding in approval, even placing early orders. Then came the influencers, younger, louder, quick to post their first impressions. They posed in Adrian's statement dress, captioning it as Maison Leora Reborn, their comment sections lighting up with excitement. The feedback was more than positive, it was energizing. For the first time in months, I felt the spark that had drawn me to this work in the beginning. Adrian caught my eye across the showroom, a rare grin tugging at his mouth. Launch day was only a week away, and for the first time, I wasn't dreading it. I was ready to see if the rest of the world would agree. Launch day arrived with the low hum of anticipation running through every hallway of Maison Leora. The runway was a clean stretch of white, lined with editors, buyers, and influencers. Their conversations a mix of curiosity and expectation. I stood backstage with the final checklist in hand, watching models slip into the pieces we'd labored over for weeks. When the first look hit the runway, the room stilled. Cameras clicked in rapid bursts as the blend of structure and flow, tradition and risk, moved under the lights. Each piece told the story of the push and pull between Adrian and me, my precision, his daring, and together. They sang. By the time the finale dress appeared, a shimmering emerald statement that somehow managed to be both bold and entirely wearable, I could hear the murmurs from the front row. Excitement, not doubt. Applause rose before the last model even turned at the end of the runway, backstage. The energy was electric. PR staff were already reporting record online orders from the live stream. Editors were posting glowing first impressions. Buyers were placing calls to secure their allocations before the collection sold out. Elias found me first. "Head designer," he said. Placing a hand on my shoulder, it wasn't a question, it was an announcement. Then he turned to Adrian, "And you'll continue in your creative lead role, under Hannah's guidance." Adrian accepted it without hesitation. "Fair," he said simply, and for the first time since he'd walked into the company, I believed he meant it. We met in the middle of the backstage chaos, shaking hands with the quiet understanding that this had been more than just saving a collection. It had been about saving the identity of the brand. Out in the audience, I caught sight of Elias again, seated in the second row, a rare, genuine smile on his face. It wasn't the smile of a man choosing between two visions. It was the smile of someone who'd seen them merge into something stronger. Sometimes the biggest wins don't come from one side defeating the other. They come when no one has to lose.